completing their installation laps at present. Toprak playing for the gallery. Still a long way to go this weekend, but he'll be hoping to get the job done here tomorrow morning.
Yeah, you can see that for Toprak, even down pit lane at the pit lane speed limit, still quite keen just to make sure he's able to get a little bit of pressure into those tyres and get them up to temperature as quickly as possible. And for the likes of Jonathan Ray, you can see here now in the #1 Kawasaki, this is a really important session because he lost out in so much running in this morning's session. He was only out on track for 15 minutes, spent the rest of the time in the pit lane. So for Ray, this is very important to be able to get himself up to speed. That's where it'd be really important for him to at least see Alex Lowe's go second fastest. He'll be able to use some of the information from the other side of the pit box.
Great statistical comparison between the top two in
this morning, so you'd expect to see Toprak's time eclipsed pretty quickly in this session.
Toprak himself crossing the line moves.
Seen too much at this stage of the session of what his real pace can be.
Yes, Razgatlioglu was a couple of tenths up after the first sector. But as you say, that lap time going away from him. Alvaro Bautista directly behind him on track, also losing a little bit of ground in the third sector now. Could be over to Jonathan Ray, perhaps, to be the first rider to better Razgatlioglu's time from FP1, and that will be a much-needed tonic after his running was severely restricted earlier on here today, just around about half the number of laps that the rider put in, who did the most laps in that session, 1:22, so he picks Alex Lowe's his fastest time of the weekend. He's not quite able to get down into the 1 minute 34s like Razgatlioglu was earlier on here today. So it's Jonathan Ray, the fastest man out there then.
The third fastest, only 100th of a second off Jonathan Ray's pace as well, so he'll come back in and get himself back out there pretty quick.
Yes, 11 thousandths at the moment between Jonathan Ray, Toprak Razgatlioglu and Alex Lowe. Saw a bit of a moment there off the curb for Jonathan Ray, who is clearly trying to get a move on in the early stages of FP2, just directly behind Tati Mercado there out on the circuit. Garrett Gerloff also on a good lap at the moment, looking to move up towards the top of the order. But one of the crucial things, and it was said a couple of rounds ago, was to get Alex Lowe's up there, to get Alex Lowe's up in the fight, and see if there is an opportunity for a bit of team play for KRT.
Yeah, it was interesting actually speaking to Jonathan Ray about that and how you can work as a team, and really important. We saw it in the Super Bowl sessions especially,
where the better, and we talk about it in those terms because we know, frankly, that Jonathan Ray needs the race victories if he's going to get on terms with Toprak. If he's behind, it doesn't matter how many riders are up at the front of the field. Talking about being behind, Jonathan Ray sits and follows Razgatlioglu, who knows he's there, looks over his shoulder, and Ray must have slowed down, I think, to get himself in that position.
On track, but off track, they've both been able to keep the respect that they have for one another. It's been interesting to see how that relationship has evolved. Obviously, from a few years ago when Toprak first came onto a superbike, it was almost seen that it was Ray to be the...
I don't think Ray will be showing too much or sharing too much with Razgatlioglu over the course of this weekend in particular, as he tries to follow his quarry out on the circuit as well as in championship terms. But of course the points are to be scored here until tomorrow. It does give an interesting indication though, as Jonathan Ray just sweeps down the inside of Razgatlioglu.
Yeah, and you see Toprak quick look over his shoulder there. He's not too bothered at this stage, but for Jonathan Ray, about 3/10 of a second off pace at the halfway stage of the lap. But you'd expect to see him just gradually build himself up again over the course of the rest of this stint. He's already put in probably about 6 or 7 laps, so for Ray, you would imagine he'll probably do another 3 laps to come back into the pits. But he's still got a lot of track time to make up compared to some of the riders this morning. The good thing for him is, though, that as you'd expect in this session, the track conditions an awful lot better. Riders all getting themselves, maybe still feeling the effects of that.
Good to see Tom Sykes made their way back into the pits. Axel Bassani, Alvaro Bautista and Leon Haslam rounding out your top 10. We now pick up Razgatlioglu, 2/10 of a second faster than Jonathan Ray at the end of the third sector, actually losing a little bit of time to Ray through that sector. But it's in this fourth sector that he'd been making up a lot of time earlier on today. We'll see if he can actually go better than the target time he set this morning, a 1 minute 34.985. If he does it, he'll be the first rider in this session to go into the 1 minute 34s. 1:35.122 is the time to beat set by Jonathan Ray, and Razgatlioglu beats Ray's time, but not quite able to get back into the 1 minute 34s.
Yeah, staying just outside the 35s, and it's gotten this.
And rounds don't necessarily reflect that.
Yeah, they've for Lowe's in particular, it's been a frustrating season. He's made a big step forward with Kawasaki and had a mid-season test in Portimao for a single-day test, and that was just around the Navarra round time. And from that point on, he said he made a big step forward with the bike, just wasn't physically in a position to be able to take advantage of that, and that's been one of the big issues for him all the way through this year. If you think back to obviously the pre-season testing crash on his shoulder, the testing crash in Navarra left him with some badly injured feet. He's obviously had the hand injury as well. It's been one thing after the other. In racing, when you get one knock, it tends to come as a bit of momentum building in the wrong direction, and we've seen that all the way through the season for Lowe's. I think it's going to be quite interesting to see what the likes of Bautista does on the Ducati next year, because as a package we saw that Alvaro and the V4R were unbeatable at times, and it'll be interesting to see just how much everyone else has moved forward to be able to close that gap.
The other question mark, I suppose, as far as next season is the number 2 riders, as it were, of a couple of those main teams, the likes of Michael Rinaldi, who has an opportunity now in the shadow of Scott Redding next season. He's got time under his belt on that machinery just as much as Alvaro Bautista, and Andrea Locatelli, who's been one of the revelations of 2021, certainly from sort of rounds 4 or 5 onwards, whether he can benefit from having a potential world champion alongside him for next season.
Yeah, I think for Locatelli in particular, it's going to be really interesting to see how next year goes. He's 5th in the championship this year. He's been a rider that's made such big steps forward since he came to the World SBK paddock. If you think back to when he jumped on a Supersport bike in Phillip Island last year, there was a sense that he had just washed out of the Grand Prix paddock, hadn't lived up to the expectations that people had for him whenever he was coming in as a Moto3 rider. Showed him the Supersport bike just how good he can be. He's done a really good job all the way through this season, but I think it's going to be harder and harder next year as well for Locatelli. He could easily win races, but to try and maintain that form from top 5 in the championship, that will get more and more difficult.
Yes, and we talk early almost about next season, but it won't be long until we are thinking about 2022. Ducati planning to get straight at it, and we're not far away from the first more formal test with multiple teams involved either.
Yeah, Ducati testing Thursday and Friday in Jerez next week, so the team and the riders jump straight on a plane,
Get successes tomorrow morning in FP3.